members living in that particular constituency. Now, therefore, the House urges the national government through the Ministry of Health to urgently conduct an assessment of the public health risks posed by the continued usage of the Lang'ata Cemetery, and to institute mitigatory measures and collaborate with other stakeholders. And this includes the Nairobi City County government to identify suitable alternative land use for the particular usage of the cemeteries in this particular nation. The development and implementation of a program for the voluntary regularization of the land occupied by squatters for a prescribed period is a motion by Honorable Mark Mwenje that members of the National Assembly are set to consider this morning. The National Assembly is also set to consider the burning and the growing of eucalyptus trees in the country. And this is a motion by Honorable Moses Kirima. In this particular motion, the member seeks to have the House resolve that the national government, through the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Matters Forestry, orders absolute banning of planting of eucalyptus trees and encourages planting of indigenous species across the country. Also, the motion seeks to have the House resolve that the Ministry of Matters Environment orders the uprooting of all eucalyptus trees and replacement with other varieties of trees, particularly the indigenous species, to ensure conservation of various water sources, as well as preserve the ecosystem, as well as initiate the process of putting in place punitive measures against persons who defy these particular orders. The business of the National Assembly is yet to commence this morning, owing to the fact that the House is awaiting to raise that particular quorum to commence business this morning. And the development and implementation of child program for the children whose parents are in lawful custody is a motion on matters childcare by Honorable Brighton Yegon, that aware that Article 53 of the Constitution provides for the rights of children, including the right to free as well as compulsory basic education, and further aware that Section 22 of the Persons Deprived of Liberty Act and the Child Care Policy provides for the care of child whose parent is deprived of liberty until the child attains the age of 4 years, and recognizing that children above the age of 4 years still require parental support, and further recognizing that the majority of these children often suffer from emotional distress, social stigma, and economic hardships. Cognizant of that particular fact that all children should be accorded a means of maintaining their relationship with their incarcerated parents, the National Assembly has raised that particular quorum this morning. And I'll hand you over so we can follow up on the developments from the chamber this morning. Enjoy your viewing.
We now may proceed. You may stop the bell.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable members, we have today in the Speaker's Gallery the following students from Regis School, Runda. 1, Esther Oyo, 2, Ashley Wanjira, and 3, Michelle Kago. The honorable members, the students are at the National Assembly for 1 week as part of their job shadowing program, which the school undertakes in various institutions during school holidays. Honorable members, on my own behalf and that of the National Assembly, I wish them fruitful engagements during the course of their program. Thank you. Honorable members, I also wish to introduce to you the President of the Pan-African Parliament, the Right Honorable Chief Fortune Zephaniah Charumbira, who is seated in the Speaker's row. He is accompanied by Mr. Daniel Bukaane, a protocol officer. Honorable members, the President is in the country to enhance collaboration between the regional parliament and our parliament and the national executive. Honorable members, on my own behalf and that of the House, I wish to welcome him to the National Assembly and wish him fruitful engagements during his stay in the country. I will give an opportunity to member for Kabuchai, the Honorable Majimbo Kalasinga, as you are a member of the Pan-African Parliament.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, indeed, I'm happy to put my comment on this very able man, Honorable Chief Fortune Zephaniah Charumbira. In his leadership, Madam Speaker, Pan-African Parliament has realized a lot, and a lot has also changed. And even the attitudes of Pan-African Parliament to Africa and the world, Madam Speaker, has changed. We are very grateful about him, Madam Speaker, that this man is among the Africa's finest. The leadership in terms of the platform as PAP, offering the platform for Africa's voice on trade and African dignity, Madam Speaker, has come to its fruition. I wish him a nice stay in Kenya and safe flight back to South Africa, Midland, as we shall join him in May as members of PAP. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving this chance. Thank you.
I'll also give opportunity to another member who's a member of the Pan-African Parliament, member for Nairobi City County, Honorable Esther Passaris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is an honor for me as the member of Nairobi County to be a member of the Pan-African Parliament. And it is also an honor for us as the members of the Pan-African Parliament from Kenya, both in the National Assembly and the Senate, to actually host our President, Chief Fortune Charumbira. Chief has been in the country for the last 2 days. He's had an extremely tight schedule. He was hosted first by our own Speaker, the Right Honorable Moses Wetangula, and the Senate Speaker as well, Amason Kingi. Our chief also held meetings with His Excellency the President, where we were also present, including the Ambassador for Zimbabwe. Madam Speaker, as we sat and listened to all the deliberations from the speakers of the two houses as well as the President, we realized that the continent of Africa has a lot of work to do. And it is our hope that eventually the Africa Union and all the members will realize that we need a huge budget. It is really sad that we have a deficit in our budget and we are not able to accomplish all the things that the founders of the Pan-African Parliament had envisaged. Our President is very passionate He understands the issues from trade to tariffs to freedom of passage of movement within the continent, to also climate change issues. We are going to be hosting in the month of May, as we go into session, climate change as an agenda and a topic, and thereafter also trade. And we are also hoping that our own president will be there to give a keynote address, because he is very passionate and he's driving the agenda of climate change. We know that Africa suffers the brunt of climate change, and yet we are not the contributors of gases into the environment. So we as Kenya, I believe we are very proud that we have delivered our president to the country and engaged in all these deliberations, and we're hoping that eventually Africa as a continent will be able to stand firmly and maximize on its resources, its consumption, its production locally. The president had mentioned that we're a huge market and we cannot be ignored. And we also need the respect of all our international partners as the continent of Africa. We are no longer the dark continent. We're a continent with a lot of potential, with a population with a huge purchasing power, with a young population that is vibrant and educated. So as a continent, we want to be able to make model laws so that as a continent we can move together. But without resources, this is not going to be easy. So as our parliament deliberates, we also want to push for resources for the Pan-African Parliament so that we can achieve our mandate to legislate and harmonize growth and prosperity, not only in our own countries, our regions, but in the continent. I want to say thank you to our President for being with us this week, and wish you journey mercies as you head back. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I also call upon Member for Eldama Ravine, the Honorable Musa Sirma, who previously served with the Chief of the President of the Pan-African Parliament.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I appreciate the visit by the President of Pan-African Parliament, I would like to say I had the honor and privilege to serve with him during the second Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament, that is the 2008 to 2013 Parliament. And Madam Speaker, you will realize that those who climb the ladder of Pan-African Parliament leadership are those who have the experience and those who have served in the Pan-African Parliament. I would like to ask our members who are serving in the Pan-African Parliament at the present time that we need them back so that they could climb up the leadership. We have heads of bureaus who are deputies and head of the caucuses. I know the members from Kenya were late in going to the Pan-African Parliament, and I hope that they will be considered so that they can be able to climb up the ladder of the Pan-African Parliament leadership. Madam Speaker, this parliament is a great parliament. When we are going to be discussing about Africa, the free trade zone, to have our countries trade internally without going out of Africa, this is the instrumental tool to be used by the African countries to be able to have Africa grow. I want to wish my good friend, Chief, I don't know, possibly many members may not know why he's called Chief.
Allow
he
the
owns
military
a kingdom in
to
Zimbabwe.
Restore
And therefore,
peace and order,
Madam Speaker, this is a great man who has been installed as a chief, and he has also been installed as the President of Pan-African Parliament. May you have journey mercies, God's blessings as you lead the voice of Africa into one voice. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I also call upon the Honorable Rehab Mokami, member for Nyeri County.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank
thank our president, Chief Fortune from South Africa. I want to thank him because he really welcomed us when we went to South Africa, as we went late, and he was able to assist us, and we allocated committees. Personally, I'm in a committee of cooperation. Honorable Speaker, we are going to support our president. We are going to support democracy within the Africa and the economy challenges. We are going to support on free trade area, ecosystem Africa, to utilize trade business in our continent. Honorable Speaker, lastly, we are going to continue widening and deepening Africa integration. Honorable Speaker, I want to wish our...
Mr. Speaker, sir, we immediately identified certain parts of Samburu County and the other 4 counties which were being used to hold or to hold and hide bandits. And we asked members of the public to vacate from those places. And this, for the information of the House, Mr. Speaker, these are not habitual places of residence. In fact, the mischief we were trying to cure is that we had established that after stealing livestock, these bandits would retreat to very remote caves and gorges, which are not places of habitual residence. Hide there, and they could survey or try and track what we had, the rest of our agencies were doing and the rest of the public, and plan further attacks from there. But they had invited what we considered perhaps members of their families. So we established their women and children holed up in those caves and gorges. And that's why we gave the kind of orders we gave after declaring these places disturbed and dangerous. The situation has improved. But after we gave the 24-hour orders for the public to leave these dangerous places, which were gazetted and publicized, the unintended but expected consequence was that some of the criminals took the 24-hour notice to mix with the rest of the population, because after 24 hours, we were able to dominate all the places we identified. And I can report to the House today, Mr. Speaker, that all the places, the caves, the gorges, the ravines, all the places that were being used as hideouts for bandits in Baringo, Laikipia, Samburu, Turkana, and West Pokot counties, and Elgeyo Marakwet, those places are clean, have been cleared and dominated by security forces. Our intention now is to make sure that those bandits will never, never, never get to access those places again. We'll do so by ensuring that our presence and the presence of security agencies in these areas is going to remain permanent. Even after we call off the operation, we will not withdraw the presence of security officers. They will dominate those areas and make it impossible for bandits to retreat to the Corcoran Hills in Baringo, Tandare Valley, the Pura Valley, Malaso Escarpment, and all the gorges and caves that were identified. So I think we need to clarify for the public interest, through you, Mr. Speaker, that those orders were not targeting habitual places of public residence. They were targeting specific, remote, and uninhabited areas where bandits could retreat and plan attacks, but then, pursuant to the requirement of international law on the use of force, we are to give a notice, because some would ask, why give a notice to bandits to vacate. The target was not on bandits. In fact, we did not expect them to vacate. We did not expect them to vacate because these bandits had grown horns and were full of impunity and theatrics. That notice was intended at the general public. They could be members of their families, women and children, because under international law, if you're going to use force, then you must ensure that that force is targeted at armed criminals or belligerents or people who are resisting authority, and members of the public should have that notice. And I am happy to report, Mr. Speaker, those places are now clear. With regard to the attacks that we continue to experience in those areas, is as a result of some of the bandits who took the 24-hour window to mix up with the public. We are working very hard to make sure that we also extinguish the remaining threats. And therefore, in a nutshell, the operation, in our view, is a success. We have learned in the last 2 months there are still gaps. We are going to seal the gaps. We will stay there as long as it takes. I want to assure the people of Samburu County and all the other counties affected, including counties affected by this menace, but which are not part of the operation yet. I want to assure them the crime of violent cattle theft, rustling, banditry, and visiting terror on the public by criminals. We will make sure that that culture and that practice is finished and it will be part of the history of Kenya. We are determined to do whatever it takes. It takes a while because of the intricacies involved, but Honorable Speaker, we are on course and we will win the war. It's either Kenya or bandits. It's either the law or crime. One has to give way. Kenya will not give way. The government will not give way. The people of Kenya will not give way. Bandits, criminals, have to give way. Honorable Speaker, with regard to the second part of the question, I would like to respond as follows. The measures that we are taking, other than the military and police action to flush out criminals, includes improving our intelligence so that we work on intelligence based and intelligence-led security. We've made great strides in strengthening multi-agency intelligence sharing even within the organs of the national security. Within the National Intelligence Service, National Police Service, other agencies that are involved in the security of our country, we are investing heavily on intelligence. And the same way, Mr. Speaker, the enhancement of intelligence-led security has helped us to contain the threat of terrorism. I am convinced beyond doubt that Kenya will win against bandits through intelligence-led security operations. Number two, we have deployed and enhanced the Special Operation Group, which is one of the formed units of the National Police Service. And Mr. Speaker, for the information of the House, the future of our country winning over sophisticated and complex crime, including banditry, terrorism, drug trafficking, the future is in the specialized formed units of the National Police Service. We have a number of these formed units: Special Operations Group, the Rapid Deployment Unit, the Anti-Stock Theft Unit, and others, including the General Service Unit. These are our front front-line soldiers in the fight against complex crime. And therefore, with regard to the measures taken in Samburu West, we have deployed in the last few weeks the Special Operation Group, which helped us a great deal 2 months ago to stabilize Samburu North, the area of Baragoi. There were gunshots every day, deaths and bloodshed every day. But the Senator of Samburu and the people of Samburu will tell you from December last year, that area has been cleared. And the challenge we have, Mr. Speaker, and we call upon Parliament, the two houses of Parliament, to support our security sector. The investments required in the specialized training of these formed units is so high, yet the results are extremely precious for this country. The war against terror was won by the formed units, including, of course, the anti-terror police unit. The war on banditry will be won by a mixture of general policing, but also the use of formed units. And therefore, we will require the support of the House. So the way we've done with Baragoi, we are now putting SOG on other parts of Samburu and also on other parts of the affected counties, even those that are not within the operation area. And I can report to the House that on Friday, I'll be visiting Elgeyo Marakwet to see the deployment of SOG because of the Koloa Bridge and the problems we've had in Marakwet East between Tiati and Marakwet. There has been cross-border raids of late. We have sealed off that area now. It's going to be a thing of the past. And so gradually we are winning the war. We'll invest in peace building. Shortly we are starting a peace engagement, community-led peace engagement and peace building activities in all these areas because we thought we stabilized the areas first before we engage in peace building. We will also do disarmament. But we've taken our time first to stabilize and silence the guns. We must disarm the public. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the nation through this House, every criminal holding firearms illegally must surrender them. They either surrender the firearm or we will take it by all means possible. And therefore, we will have a disarmament plan. We'll have a radicalization plan because just like terrorism, banditry and cattle rustling has now assumed some radical ideological leanings where the people doing it are no longer doing it for culture. They are not just doing it for money. It's beyond enterprise. It's beyond culture. Increasingly, there is an ideology by those criminals that you can actually harass the public and take their property and kill them and terrorize and look important. And I want to assure the people of Kenya, we will defeat bandits. I don't know how it will take, but we'll defeat them, and banditry will be part of Kenyan history. Mr. Speaker, if we had continued to allow what was happening by the time the Kenya Kwanza administration came to office and the few months after, if we had left that to continue, we would have had serious security agencies because we feared that even international terrorist networks would have infiltrated some of these groupings and complicated those matters. So, Mr. Speaker, finally, we are investing in long-term rejuvenation of the region which is affected with social amenities, public infrastructure. We are negotiating with our counterparts in the Ministry of Water, Ministry of Roads, Ministry of Energy, so that whatever quota of development projects, whatever development projects that are being launched or being planned, being funded for water, for schools, for hospitals. We are requesting for security reasons to get an enhanced quota, an enhanced package for those areas so that we open northern part of Kenya, including Samburu, and make sure that these places are also empowered, they are opened up, and I keep on saying, Mr. Speaker, the future of Kenya is in the north. There is land, there are resources, there is potential for investment. If we can silence the guns and make them safe places, the future of Kenya 100 years from now, 200 years from now, is in the north of our country. I have looked at the case studies of different countries. I believe the future of this country is in the almost 3/4 of our country that is facing insecurity. If we can sort out security, that is where the future economic strength of our country will be. The same way California, in the middle of a desert, today is the backbone of the American economy. And many other countries, Australia and other places where desert territories have been turned into economic anchors for the country. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, what plans do I have for our people in Pura, Malaso, and all the other places that could have been displaced as a result of the orders I issued in Malaso on 12th of March 2023, the vacation orders? What plans do we have to make sure that they are able to normalize their lives and plant their farms? I had intended to visit that area on Friday. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have brought forward that trip to tomorrow, because on Friday I'll be in Elgeyo Marakwet. And I want to apologize to the leaders, because sometimes we give very short notices when we are traveling to your areas. It is not intentional. Unlike my colleagues in other ministries, our ministry is a ministry run on an emergency basis. We cannot plan. Other people plan where we will be. If it is not Paul Mackenzie, it is the bandits, it is other criminals, and you don't know what they are planning and what harm they'll cause where. So every day you wake up, and depending on the security situation of the country, you determine where to rush. And even as I speak, I'm rushing to Busia today, and I had not planned. So I will be visiting, in answer to the question by the senator, I'll be visiting Samburu County tomorrow afternoon to find out if there are genuine cases of people who are displaced. And from there, I'll announce the measures the government of Kenya will make to make sure that nobody who is an innocent member of the public is disrupted from their daily activities, even as we continue securitizing Samburu and Kenya as a whole. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable CS of Interior. Honorable CS, I have restrained myself because you are the very first CS to appear before the Senate. However, as you're aware, having served in this Senate, this is a house of rules and procedure. And our rules, more particularly Standing Order 51C5, a CS wishing to respond to a question must file a written response with the Senate 24 hours before they appear on the floor of the Senate. And when appearing before the Senate, of course, as a CS, you're supposed to read verbatim the response that you filed with us. And thereafter, if you have any supplementary information to the response you've given us, then you can proceed to do so. The design was given so that the senator asking the question has prior knowledge of the kind of response you will give, and therefore prepare himself or herself adequately for a supplementary question. And therefore, Honorable CS, if you appear next before the Senate, kindly we will expect you to first read verbatim the response that you will have filed with the Senate, and thereafter you will proceed, if need be, to give supplementary information to your response as and when senators ask supplementary questions. But since you're the very first CS to appear before the Senate, I've allowed you to get away with that. Now, Honorable Senators, the CS has given a very comprehensive response, though beyond the filed response that he did. And therefore, I will allow the senator who asked that question, if he has any supplementary question, to ask, and thereafter, I will allow another senator to ask supplementary question. Now, Senator Lelegwe, you, under standing orders, you have 2 supplementary questions. You may choose to ask them at once, or you may choose to ask one now, allow your colleagues to answer the supplementary questions, then you be the last to ask the very last supplementary question. Kindly proceed, Senator Lelegwe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I confirm that I have received both the electronic and hard copy of the response by the CS. Of course, late, that is today morning, but I appreciate his response, and I'm sure the promises he has made to the Senate to tackle insecurity in security-prone areas, including Samburu, will bear fruit. Mr. Speaker, I choose to ask 2 supplementary questions now, and I proceed with one. Since you made the pronouncement to order the multi-agency operation in the banditry-prone areas, many cases of banditry have occurred in the presence of the multi-agency team, the security forces, without any action taken. And I'm sure the CS has this information, has this intelligence, that cases of banditry, killing of people, loss of livestock, stealing by those bandits, have taken place. And in light of all that, in the presence of the military, in the presence of the multi-agency team, little or no recovery has been reported. Despite the success, and I agree, there is some levels of success since the deployment of these agencies. But the stolen livestock or the arrest of the perpetrators have not taken place. In light of this, CS, what is the government's policy on recovery of stolen property, that is livestock, and compensation if the government is unable to take action? We have seen families having been impoverished.
Honorable Senator, of course, today is the very first time you're doing this, and I'll be giving a lot of latitude to both the CS and the members. But kindly, the supplementary question you ought to ask must be very direct. It is not an opportunity to make a speech, and then after the speech, you pose a question. Direct questions to the CS.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker. I proceed. 1, since you made the pronouncement and ordered a multi-agency operation in banditry-prone areas, many cases of banditry have occurred in the presence of the security forces without any action taken or recovery of stolen livestock or arrest of the perpetrators. In light of this, what is the government's policy on recovery of stolen property, livestock, and compensation, if any, if the government is unable to take action? 2, what measures do you plan to implement in order to guarantee the safety and security of administrators, in this case the chiefs, operating in areas prone to banditry? Is the CS considering providing them with training and arms to enhance their security? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS, kindly proceed to respond to the 2 supplementary questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sorry for veering off the standing orders. I was still in the past. In my previous role as a senator, I am guided. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the supplementary question raised by the distinguished senator for Samburu County, I will reply as follows. That it is true that we have had incidents of banditry even after the deployment of the joint National Police Service and Kenya Defence Forces operation. I've explained why those attacks continue, because of a bit of a mix-up where we could have bandits spread out in villages, and although our officers are on ground, they cannot be deployed to every home. So we are looking for strategies to work around that and make sure that we mop out and finish that problem now that we know where the problem is. Mr. Speaker, we have made tremendous improvement in terms of recoveries of stolen livestock. Before the operation, we had very many livestock stolen which were not being recovered. And we are compiling actually data backwards from August and even the entire of 2022, just to show what this administration has done as compared to previously in terms of recoveries and those kind of action. I am able to report the data we have at the moment is showing marked improvement by this administration in terms of recoveries. We've had recoveries in Laikipia, recoveries in Baringo, recoveries in even in Samburu. And out of the 500 livestock stolen since January, we have recovered 200. 300 are still at large. And the reason is because these criminals, once they steal, they separate the livestock in small groups and disappear. They allocate each other 10, 5, 20, 15. So when you recover, you will hear that 200 goats have been stolen, but it will be shared with 10 each, 20 people, and they go different directions. So when you recover in bits and pieces, and that's part of the reason why we've not had 100% recovery. But again, we are working on how to improve our recovery progress. Finally, the senator has asked about what we are doing to make sure that our officers are trained, the national administration officers are trained and equipped. Right now, pending before the National Security Council is a proposal for a limited issuance of firearms to all chiefs, assistant chiefs, and ACCs in specific areas which are facing harsh insecurities, so that they can support the National Police Service in tracking livestock and also protecting themselves from armed criminals, because they are normally the targets. And we have lost a few already. We've lost a chief in Samburu, we've lost one in Laikipia. So we are considering a policy shift to provide firearms and also to give them training so that they can help us better serve the people of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable William Cheptumo. And senators, kindly abide by our standing order 51B3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As the Honourable Senator asks his supplementary question, for those who have queued here, kindly, as you ask your supplementary question, abide by that particular standing order, 51B, 3, so that we move. And Senator, precise, concise, very brief.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me a chance to ask some supplementary question. But Mr. CS, around 2016, 2017, your ministry gazetted a number of administrative units in various counties in our country. These created new locations, sub-locations, divisions, and some sub-counties. Up to today, those gazetted units have not been activated or able to operate. This is helping to assist your ministry on matters security, especially in the security areas. When will you do this, Wanawasiri, Mr. CS? When will you operationalize the units gazetted by your ministry in 2016, 2017 in various counties? And my county in Baringo, there are several of them, areas you were able to visit last time.
Honourable CS, 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, sir, all the gazetted administrative units will be operationalized, but due to budgetary constraints, we have decided to operationalize all the already gazetted areas in phases, in 3 phases, starting this financial year. We will have an objective criteria of identifying which of them goes the first phase, second phase, third phase. That objective criteria includes security challenges faced in that area, like banditry, terrorism, and other complex security issues, illicit drugs and alcohol, and then also regional balance, so that some in one region, another in another region. So we'll have a criteria of making sure that we do, starting this June, and that criteria will be made public so that we carry the entire country together. Asante. Thank you.
Senator Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for the CS for a well-detailed response, which has opened other things for all of us. We know him for a thorough person. Mr. Speaker, from those of us who watched from far, I don't know, I want to ask the Minister whether there is a policy of handling people who have been displaced by government for reasons including what happened this time when people were moved from their places, because what we were seeing in the media, people who were really in a very bad situation. Is there a policy where food must be provided, sanitation must be provided? Because if people are told to move and they have not told where to move to and how they are going to live, it becomes tricky. Can the Minister expound on what policy they have on how to handle them when they have left their homes? Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in response to the supplementary question asked by the distinguished Senator Margaret Kamar, I would like to respond as follows. That any Kenyan who was displaced as a result of the ongoing security operation or for whatever other reason, the policy of the government of Kenya is to resettle them. As I have said earlier before this House, Mr. Speaker, we have begun tracking whether there are any victims of the orders that I issued in Malaso on 12th of March 2023, starting with Samburu tomorrow, and all the other counties will assess if there are any genuine people who are displaced as a result of those orders. The government of Kenya will facilitate either their return or their settlement so that no Kenyan is deprived of their property or deprived or removed from their habitual places of residence. I thank you.
Senator Kathuri.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your indulgence. Honorable Speaker, my question is very direct and almost similar to what has been asked, because I agree that the future of Kenya is the north, but that is the future. So I'm asking, what immediate measures is the ministry taking to make sure that that area is considered in a very special way, so that that custom of banditry can stop, so that they can start farming and doing other things? What immediate measures is the government taking besides militarization of the region? Thank you, sir.
Honorable CS.
So, Speaker, sir, in response to the supplementary question raised by the distinguished Senator from Meru, I would like to tell the House that the use of force is an immediate, short-term, and painkiller remedy for the problem. And therefore, once we stabilize, we will roll out all the other interventions in terms of socio-economic, infrastructural, and amenity development, peace building as well, and we request the support and cooperation of the elected leaders. And I can report to this House that the ministry has already generated the appropriate framework for the reconstruction of all the affected areas, a Marshall Plan of sorts, as promised by President William Ruto during his campaigns for the presidential election. And that paper is now pending clearance at the National Security Council and the Cabinet. I can assure the nation, through you, Mr. Speaker, that in another 2 months, we will be able to announce the comprehensive Marshall Plan for permanent solutions, so that we don't have these things repeating every year, and for us doing the same thing every other year and expecting different results. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to thank the Minister for coming. I had no doubt, given the frustration we shared with him in this House for many years when we needed information from this critical ministry, that he would come. And I want to thank him and his office for the cooperation that they gave us when we were trying to urge them to come. Mr. Minister, in your position, you have access to special intelligence reports. Kenyans would like to know, unless your disclosure will prejudice operations, they would like you to tell them the role played by political players, including sitting MCS and sitting members of parliament, who we believe, wrongly or otherwise, you'll confirm, that they are part of the problem of incitement, the problem of giving logistical support, and the problem of funding, and Mr. Speaker, the problem of procuring markets where these animals are sold as far away from northeastern as Nairobi in Dagoretti. Could you share with us? And number 1B of my question, Mr. Speaker, do you have a plan, Minister, to disband that structure of security called police reservists?
Honorable CS, kindly proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to respond as follows with regard to the supplementary question raised by the distinguished senator for Kakamega. We have made significant progress in tracking and nailing the masterminds of banditry. I can confidently assure the people of Kenya, we have in our radar a number of politicians of different cadres whose activities have been linked to the support, funding, and encouragement of banditry. We have crucial evidence, some of which was collected at the scene of crime at the attack in Kainuk early in the year, which incriminates political leaders and other people. I can also report to the House, we have evidence which we are almost at the tail end of finalizing and processing of the senior commanders in the banditry enterprise. Mr. Speaker, the banditry criminal enterprise has its own command. Just last week, one of the most notorious commanders of banditry was apprehended alive from the Corcoran Hills and arraigned in court. And the leaders from Baringo and those parts know who that person is. He's terrorized us and is even helping us even to zero in and fill the gaps of the investigations that are ongoing. I want to assure the House that very soon we will have high-profile arraignment of the command of bandits, whether they are civilian commanders, politicians, etc. And we want to build a case that will succeed in court. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable CS. Now, Honorable Senators, indeed, I can see quite a number of senators would wish to ask supplementary questions to the Cabinet Secretary. However, we have expended well about 40 minutes on this particular question. If you remember my first communication when we adopted these standing orders, I indeed made it clear to you that we were going to spend at most 20 minutes per question. I want to believe that the CS Interior, this is not his last appearance before us, and any supplementary question, Honorable Senators, you may be having, I believe we'll still find an appropriate opportunity to be answered by the CS. Therefore, I'm afraid to say that we will. Honorable Senators, the reason I always ask you to read your standing orders is because of, for such reasons. You're raising a point of order on who? There's no senator who is on his feet. And therefore, that is the communication from the chair. Now, Honorable Senators, I've got a communication to make. Senator Kinyua, kindly take your seat. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Right Honorable Chief Fortune Zephaniah Charumbira, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, in the Speaker's Gallery. The Right Honorable Charumbira is in the country for an official visit to the Parliament of Kenya. He is accompanied by Mr. Daniel Bachwane, an officer from the Pan-African Parliament. Honorable Senators, I have had an opportunity to engage with the Right Honorable Chief Charumbira and our discussion centered on parliamentary diplomacy and climate change. These are pertinent issues affecting African region as a whole, with respect to food security, conflict resolution, and resource management, and are high on the agenda of the Pan-African Parliament. We also had a discussion on the upcoming Heads of State Summit in the month of May 2023 in South Africa. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the Right Honorable Chief Fortune Zephaniah Charumbira, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish him a fruitful visit. I will call upon the Senator for Tana River, the Honorable Mungatana, to make very brief welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we want to join you as part of the Kenya delegation, which is comprised of myself, the Honorable Professor Kamar, the Honorable Member for the National Assembly, Honorable Mukami, the Honorable Majimbo Kalasinga, the Honorable Esther Passaris, to welcome the President of the Parliament, which is resident in South Africa. Mr. Speaker, this President has been very effective in terms of supporting the agenda for the continent. Mr. Speaker, that Parliament has been transformed from the chaos that it used to be before to a platform for exposition of the agenda of Pan-Africanism. Mr. Speaker, we credit him for the work that he has done since his election as President of the Pan-African Parliament. Mr. Speaker, we from Kenya have been pushing and continue to push that Kiswahili be made a major language at the continental level. Right now, Mr. Speaker, we have Arabic language, we have French, English, and Portuguese. But, Mr. Speaker, the Kiswahili language, although accepted, and it's the only African language, really, indigenous language, has not been used properly and to the large extent that is required in the work of that Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to welcome the Honorable President in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, like you said, we have had great engagements with him. He has been also up to the State House and had great engagements with the President. We are very grateful and honored to have him in Kenya today. Mr. Speaker, I join you in welcoming him. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, I will now proceed to discharge the CS Interior. And I've noticed that
no law. The gap is caused because enforcers are not doing their job. So, Honorable GK and the Chief Justice here, you need actually, on your own motion, without necessarily having to have somebody present a petition here or request for a statement, on your own motion as a committee, you may need to summon the enforcers of this matter so that we reduce these accidents. These accidents are too many. We had a member of Parliament the other day who lost his life because of a Boda. This we know, but how many other people? How many other people? Mama Mboga selling boga on the pavement of a road, and a Boda comes and runs over them and kills all of them. How many other people that 2 children going to school are carried by a boda. 2 children. There's an incident in my constituency where 3 children of the same mother were being carried on one boda. And those children never reached school. They died on the road. All of them, 3 of them. That's a tragedy for a family. Just because this boda was not able to use his lights properly, you know? And he turned left before he had put on the lights to show that he's turning left. And this vehicle came and rammed over this boda. 3 children from the same mother died on the same day. And if you ask, this guy had just passed a traffic station, you know, where the roadblock, he just passed a traffic roadblock. And this traffic police never bothered what this guy was doing on the road. He was just bothered about what this rider would give him. These are the issues that we are talking about in the boda sector. How are they regulated? How are they licensed? Anybody these days who can ride a boda just rides, whether he has a license or not, whether he knows traffic rules or not, whether he knows the road rules or not, he will just pick a boda and ride and carry passengers. And yet, we have traffic enforcers on the road, and they don't look at this. I have never seen a situation where a boda has been stopped at a roadblock and he's asked for a license. They never ask them for licenses. They never do that. They only ask, umenibebea ile kitu yangu. And that's what matters. That's what matters. Yes, and when they're given whatever they should have been carried for, they let the bodas. A lot of the bodas on the road, if the officers were actually enforcing the rules, every boda would have gone to at least a driving school, gotten some a license, some basic knowledge on road use. People think that as long as you can ride a boda, you know the road rules. And that is where the problem, Madam Speaker. So I would like to urge my friend, we served with him in the Lands Committee, a very effective legislator, Honorable Kingara, to, instead of allowing this bill to continue to a situation where it actually loses in this, why doesn't he withdraw it? Instead of allowing this bill to go to 3rd reading and it is knocked down there and it has the indignity of one of those bills that was knocked off at the floor of the House. It's actually an indignity when your bill gets knocked off on the floor of the House. Why doesn't he withdraw it and sits with the committee and they look at the gaps, then reintroduce it to the House so that he can go on record as one of those persons that actually had a bill passed, as one of those members that had a bill passed and assented by the President from the 13th Parliament. That would be my advice. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Kilifi North. The Honorable Charles Ngusia Nguna, Member for Mwingi West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute what my colleagues have already said. I begin by appreciating my friend Simon for coming up with this bill, although it's already existing, Madam Speaker. We all appreciate this mode of transport, and we know it is one of the ways of providing affordable mobility of services that is otherwise not available in many parts of our country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will begin by appreciating this industry, which started a long time ago when President Kibaki was in power. And we all appreciate that it has employed many people, especially the youth, who have got no otherwise source of income, Madam Speaker. We appreciate the way the industry has really contributed in terms of transport and communication system in our country. Madam Speaker, I would like to alert the House that in my constituency, I have been training boda operators, or rather drivers, through the NTSA and also the people who provide these services. And I've seen a lot of improvement. These people only actually violate the laws and regulations on the road safety when they lack information. But we know already we have the law in place. What we need is just for the enforcers to make sure implementation of the same is done So Simon, my good friend, Honorable, was actually on the right course of doing this, and we'll be looking forward to collaborating with him to see what the bill is missing so that we can make those amendments and make it more practicable to all the road users in our country. With those few remarks, I say it's a good thing, and this system needs really regulations to restore sanity on the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Charles Ngusia. The Honorable Phyllis Barto, member for Moiben.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also make my remarks on this debate on behalf of the people of Moiben constituency. Madam Speaker, I would like to appreciate the contribution our Boda brothers and sisters are doing in the economy. Their contribution to society cannot be underestimated because they offer a variety of services. In as much as the law exists, I think, Madam Speaker, what is very important is the regulation of this business. It is a source of livelihood to many people, and it has contributed in the alleviation of poverty in Kenya. In fact, it is the most progressive industry, almost overcoming the matatu business in Kenya. From my constituency where I come from, the Boda community is a very vibrant one. What is only lacking, Madam Speaker, is the regulation. I think we need to enforce the regulations on this industry. We need to look at issues of having them getting insured. We need to look at the licensing, that any Boda rider gets to have a license and know the rules and regulations of transport. Madam Speaker, you will find that there are so many accidents attributed to the Boda riders, and as Deputy Majority Leaders has alluded that there are some hospitals where they have set aside award for those riders who have been involved in road accidents. And it is not exceptional in any parts of Kenya, it's all over. What I would suggest is that tough regulations be enforced so that the industry is structured and regulated in a way that it provides services in a better way. Madam Speaker, we need to ensure that before one takes to the streets, to the roads, to the Kenyan roads, to ride a motorbike, they should have training, they should have a license, and also they should go for refresher courses any other time after a certain period of riding, so that they are always, so that those licenses are renewed. We find that of late, anybody just who can be able to buy a motorbike just goes to the shops, and even we have providers, those who provide loans to these people, to the riders, to get motorbikes in a very easy way. It's a good way, but you just buy your motorbike and you are already on the road practicing and learning, and at the same time doing business. We even have students, Madam Speaker, who buy the motorbikes and they go to school, they do part-time business. They are in school and at the same time they are doing the motorbike business. So that needs a lot of regulation, and that needs a lot of enforcement, and also the age. You even find very young youth, people who are below 18 years, and they are participating in this industry, making a source of livelihood, some of even paying their school fees, which is not a bad idea, but regulation is very important, and we stick to the age limit of where you must be, for you to be given the license, you must be having a national ID, so that the industry is run in a better way, because if we don't support this industry, Madam Speaker, we will have so many of our young people idling. We are at a situation now where we are fighting cases of illicit brew, cases of drugs. That is where most of our youth spend most of their time. The Boda industry is keeping most of them to be very busy. How I wish